Yo guys, what is up? Max in our first Descendant video, and today we're going to be going over my guide for Luna. However, as this is a new character introduced to the game and our first ever new character, I also just kind of wanted to give my first impressions and opinions on her. So the video is going to start with what I think about the character and my feedback on her, and then we'll get into how to build her and tips and tricks. Hope you guys enjoy the build video. Let's get right into it. So to start us off, Luna is a support character. She's got kind of a pretty complex kit because you can change her entire kit by adding her like noise surge mod, which turns her into a DPS, and then she's not a support character at all. But on the support side, basically your one ability pulls out a unique weapon. You need to pull this weapon out in order to use any of your skills. So she can't use her skills and use her guns at the same time. You're kind of locked into that, like clicking your weapon or your abilities to keep up with the beat. With her one, it's kind of just her activation. You can build up perfect pitch for yourself, which will grant you your skill power modifier. Her passive skill is called improvisation. When you use a skill to hit the note, inspiration gauge goes up. When the inspiration gauge maxes out, an enhanced skill can be used. Using an enhanced skill completely depletes your inspiration gauge. However, when failing to hit the note, inspiration gauge goes down and the skill fails to activate. While out of combat for a certain period of time, inspiration gauge is completely depleted. So with her one, just hitting her notes is going to build up your meter. However, it's not very noticeable. You really want to be activating her 4 to really build up her custom resource. Her 4 is called Cheerful Act, which grants you cheerful performance, and everything that she has as a buff is a separate buff for her and then a different buff for your teammates. So for example, Cheerful Performance increases your gauge while you're using it, and you can get more gauge faster. And the buff that you can give to your teammates is Cheerful Sound, which will decrease their cooldown. And then if you use it as an enhanced skill, you give your teammates 100% cooldown decrease. They just get their skills back. And it works similarly for her 2 and her 3, where if you're using her 2, you're going to get Exciting Performance for yourself, which increases your skill power modifier. And you're going to give Exciting Sound to your teammates, which increase their skill power and their skill crit and skill crit damage and skill power, and it scales off of your MP. So on this character, one of the ways that you want to scale her support abilities is actually increasing your max mana, which is pretty interesting. And duration increases the duration of the buffs on your allies, because you can kind of keep these things up as long as you're playing notes in rhythm, you can kind of keep up these buffs and swap between them. And lastly, her third ability, Relaxing Act, gives her MP recovery and her teammates MP recovery and resource cost decrease. And all of these buffs allow her to be, without a doubt, one of the strongest supports in the game, particularly when it comes to ability supports. No other character can give like skill base, skill crit, cooldown, resource cost reduction, MP recovery, and you can pair her with some like ability-based Descendants to do some really awesome things. Now her Transcendent module Noise Surge kind of changes everything. She no longer is buffing her allies, but she's buffing herself. The 2, instead of giving skill crit hit rate and damage to her allies, is giving skill crit rate to herself. Her third ability is giving skill crit damage, which stacks, and her 4th is giving skill power modifier. So she turns into this like big AoE skill crit Descendant. She has like a pretty solid AoE, and she can put out some pretty solid damage with this, but there's some complaints that I have that we're going to talk about in a second. But it's really cool that she has a Transcendent module that completely changes her whole kit and the way that she plays. So now that we've done a little bit of an overview, I kind of want to talk about my impressions of her, and then we'll get into the full build guide. But I personally just don't really enjoy playing this character. There's quite a few complaints that I have and quite a few things that I'd love to see them change. I don't want to just sit here and rant about the things I don't like. I do want to offer some ways that we could improve her. So to start us off, she is very niche. This isn't a character that everyone's going to like, and I totally understand that. Her playstyle is very active, and she has a lot of nuance to her, but I think they could make her a lot more enjoyable for a lot more players with a few changes and a few quality of life things. So, for example, on her damage ability, one of the coolest things about it is that you can, instead of having to click the button to shoot, you can build up her passive just by clicking the notes, which is really, really nice. And it makes her gameplay feel a lot better because you can be more on the move. And then when you build up your full ability, you can pop into this mode where you can kind of hover on this board and you have this enhanced skill with a radius. and it's a lot more chill in the gameplay. My issue with her right now is you constantly have to be paying attention, constantly have to be hitting your notes, and you know, there's so many characters that basically do what she does for damage, but without like the kind of this like 100% focus on hitting every note. And so I think one thing that would be really cool for quality of life for her is just give her the ability to build into duration. Right now, duration doesn't really do much. But if you could build in duration or maybe extend the enhanced skill, so like maybe I could build like skill extension. We'll talk about mods here in a second. But if I build skill extension, I would be able to stay in that enhanced form for maybe like 10 seconds, and rather than like, what is it, like 3 or 4? Just the way that I could be rewarded. So I'm playing the game, I'm being active. If I hit my thing, I can just hover around on this for a little while and just chill out. Personally, I think that would make her a lot more enjoyable to play. You still have the rhythm playstyle, you still have to hit all the notes, but then when you do, you're rewarded for a little bit longer, and I think that would make her gameplay loop feel a lot better. The other thing that I'm not like overly enjoying about her is honestly just her like rhythm-based gameplay. I've played a few rhythm-based games, like Metal Hellsinger is probably the first one that comes to mind that I really enjoyed, and it just, there's a satisfaction that's kind of missing with hitting the notes on beat with her, and like the music is not all that great. I would love if I could like make my own custom tracks or import a song or maybe purchase a song from a store that I could, you know, like change up the music. And also if they made the rhythms a little bit more impactful and better feeling, just to turn on the sounds for a second. Like, I don't even think that the, like, hitting the things go in tune with the beat really all that much. Like, you have the music part of it, you have the beat clicking, but they just don't really sync up for me all that well to make the gameplay feel all that, like, kind of satisfying. So that's kind of my rant over with her. I think she's a very valuable support, but I think she'll be a lot more valuable once the game gets harder. Kind of how Eugen is not a character that I ever thought that I would really bring out, and then Gluttony came out, and Gluttony is I got my first clear on Gluttony with Eugen, because being able to heal your entire team from an infinite amount of area is disgusting. I think when we get more harder content, she's going to be more valuable. I do think she's helpful right now, but I don't think she's a must-have in a team comp. And I hope that they make her gameplay a little bit more fluid and a little bit better feeling. And now let's talk about builds. So we're going to start out with a super budget build for her Noise Surge, and then we'll talk about like more expensive stuff. But to start us out, this is only one catalyst, no activators. Basically, we just catalyzed on maximum HP, and then we're going to be using maximize skill and maximize power. These are usually massive detriments to builds and only used when you're one-shotting things for bossing. However, with Luna, you don't actually incur any like cooldown on using her abilities. You can kind of just swap between them. If you hit a note fail or you're failing your notes, you are going to go on cooldown, but you can always just swap to like a different ability. So I'll just kind of show you what this looks like. So if we hit her too, and we can just kind of spam this and click our buttons. And then let's say I do a note fail. We'll do a note fail right after this. So let's say I do a note fail. Boom. Fail, fail. I can still just go into her other ability and just keep spamming this. And if I fail this note, then I can still go into her other ability. So the cooldowns on her, like on the note fails, is really not a big deal. As long as you're hitting your notes, you're not even going to encounter it at all. And, you know, you should build for having a good playstyle, not a bad one. But you can basically use these things to just absolutely massively increase her amount of damage, which is fantastic. And then we're going to be using skill expansion for more range for her DPS, and just slapped in this frugal mindset for a little bit more range on her abilities. And this is like the basic of a AoE DPS Luna setup. For a full investment DPS build on Luna, this is what I'd rock. This is a like build website. I can leave the link to it in the description. You can plan out builds. And while I haven't invested this much into Luna, I've tested all of these mods, and all of them work fantastic on her. So the big things that we're going to be using are maximize range and skill expansion for a 186% increased range with her. All of her buffs increase her skill crit rate and damage and modifier and all these things that synergize really well with going full crit on her. She also has a fantastic base crit of like 15%. So we're actually going to go 4 crit mods: skill concentration, skill insight, front lines, and emergency measures. We're going to be using maximize skill and maximize power because cooldowns don't really do anything for her. We've got max HP and then multi-talented. Multi-talented is the flex slot. All of her skills are going to be singular, so you're getting like a 30% all attribute damage increase. And if you hit your 1, you can activate the tech active skill, which gives you more power and more range. If you wanted a little bit more survivability on her, you could put this to something like spear and shield. Could totally go for like a spear and shield mod. It's going to cost you a little bit more. You'd have to catalyze this like M slot if you wanted to do that. But you could put more defense or even more HP on here, or even something like frugal if you wanted to get a little bit more extra range on her. That brings her up to 208 increased range. But yeah, that last slot is pretty flexible. I think everything else here is pretty important though. One thing I do want to mention real quick is Potent Collector is a very cool mod for her. Whenever you defeat an enemy, you recover a percent of your custom resources. I was originally going to include this in her like noise surge setup. However, it just doesn't work properly right now, because if you defeat an enemy and you're about to get your enhanced ability and you kill an enemy with Potent Collector on, you actually go above and like break and go back down to 0 instead of hitting the cap. So you can use Potent Collector on her DPS setup. Just note that it's pretty possible to just bug yourself out where you're going to be constantly resetting your max resource rather than actually gaining up to it. Because if you are like 1 away and you get your resource with a click and on that same one practice lucky hit chance, then you just go back to 0. So I don't think it's worth using at the moment. Next up, we get to our budget setup for support. With support, one of the big things that you want actually is increased MP. A lot of her things actually scale off of her amount of MP that she has, to give your teammates and yourselves bigger buffs. So max MP is super important. The other things that are really important are duration. The more duration that you have, the more or the longer the buffs on your teammates last. And then range is also really important to be able to get all of your teammates within the range of your buffs. So for this setup on budget, we've got increased HP. This is just 1 catalyst, no activators. Enlightenment for more at max MP. Skill expansion for more range. MP accelerant for more duration and more max MP. Skill extension for more duration. And energy collection for better MP recovery. For like a high investment support build, this is like what I would set up with her if I was using the exact same sockets as on the DPS. So I've kept the sockets from the DPS. That's why you have a bunch of red numbers, because if you want to build her for DPS, you have to put on crit modules, and crits are triangles. And there's not really any support triangle mods. So if you wanted to build her for full support, you would build her very differently for DPS. For me personally, she's a lot more cool as a DPS character. That's what I like to do. That's what I'd like to play her as. So that's what I set up this build for. But if you wanted to follow this guide loosely and just take away some of the best mods for her support build, here are some suggestions. You're going to want maximize range and skill expansion for the most amount of AoE to buff your teammates. You're going to want to buff up your MP as much as possible. To do that, we can use Arc Concretion. This is a new mod. You can get it from Hard Pyro. I'm pretty sure this gives you up to like 39% increased max MP and stacking up defense as long as you're using your skills and your enhanced skills. Increased HP for survivability, enlightenment for more max MP, agony for more max MP and defense, and skill extension for more duration of your buffs on your teammates. If you wanted to look for some like even more awesome things, there is MP Accelerant, which gives you more duration and more max MP. This is also a really fantastic mod for her, but obviously now we'd be like breaking our costs. But a lot of these are really important kind of must-have mods for her support stuff. And the Nimble Footstep Transcendent module only allows her to be an even better support, giving her more movement speed and more skill range. For her components, her best in slot is probably the Hungry Sonic set. This allows you to stack up waves, which gives you MP recovery, which can turn into increased skill duration, so your buffs last longer, and you can get that duration stacking up based off of your max MP, which we're going to be scaling a lot of on her support setup. So for the support, you can rock this set. You are going to lose a little bit of survivability, but you can roll HP defense on the top slot. You can roll max MP and shield on the middle slots with more max shield, and then your bottom slot, you can roll max HP, max shield. This does make you squishy, but you will be a better support. There are a few other options. If you want to max out her damage with her damage ability with her noise surge, you could rock full Slayer set. Full Slayer set will give you kind of ridiculous amounts of damage, just because it's going to boost up your base damage. So full Slayer set, pretty gross. And then another set that I'd probably rock in terms of like what I would just use on her normally is I would probably just rock just HP and defense components, and then you can wear a 2-piece Annihilation set for a little bit more duration. 2-piece Annihilation with like 2-piece whatever is just a really solid base to have, and you get that duration and you don't lose any survivability. For her reactor, you're obviously going to be looking for a legendary reactor. The weapon that you're wearing doesn't really matter, or the mounting doesn't really matter. She does have one weird weapon interaction, actually, and that happens to be with the Transcendent, or not the Transcendent module, but the module Brisk Walk. You can slot this on, and whenever you get hit, you actually get more movement speed. So if you're looking for like a weapon mounting, you can use this on like general rounds. So you can go for like a general rounds mounting for non-attribute when singular, and ideally on your reactor. Mine's pretty garbage, but you're looking for skill crit or skill crit chance. Range is also really nice. Any combination of the three with crit chance, crit damage, and range will all be really good for her damage setup. For her mobbing setup, you don't really care too much about her reactor, or for her like healing setup. Ideally, you're just going for duration and range, I think would be her two best substats. And then you're looking for non-attribute, and then singular, I guess would be the thing, but you're not scaling damage, so it doesn't really matter. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on this kind of like format of this build video. Not only just giving my impressions on a character rather than just doing the build, but also using that build planner website to talk about some more advanced things and some future plans for characters that I haven't quite gotten to fully investing into. But yeah, guys, I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care. Peace.